Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining. Today, I'm going to talk about something fundamental to what you've seen throughout this whole conference. So through this conference, you've been talking about all the exciting things that you can do with data, things like business intelligence, training machine learning models. But something that underlies all of that is this question of context. And what I'm going to show is where we've come with context, how we thought about that, and also what we see the future of this being. And I'm going to give a sneak preview, a demonstration of where we're headed with DataHub and context and how that relates to the new world that we're entering. So before I get started, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. I'm the founding engineer of the DataHub project. And I started thinking about how to help people use data, leverage context about data, and take advantage of data while I was at Airbnb. So there, I helped Airbnb scale to thousands of data practitioners as the company was rapidly growing. We were growing from hundreds to thousands of data practitioners. There were multiple business verticals that were expanding at Airbnb, and we had to think about how can we adjust our approach to collecting data, to governing data and using data so that we can support this massively growing number of data users and data subjects. So as on the core logging team, I was the tech lead there, and we figured out how to scale to that number of users. From there, I thought supporting thousands of data practitioners is great, but how can I take this and bring it to the next 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of data practitioners? So at this point, I joined DataHub as a founding engineer to help not just bring data discovery to everyone, but also help with things like data governance, data compliance, and data quality. So DataHub is the #1 open source project for data and context management. We've grown to over 15,000 members of our open source Slack community. We have over 1,000 production deployments, and we're really proud of partnering with incredible technical partners. We have people like Visa, Netflix, Apple, Slack. These are just a few of the 1,000+ production deployments who are part of our open source community, contributing to the DataHub platform and helping gather context so that everyone can take advantage of all the amazing data that they have. So why are we talking about data and context management now? This is something I've been working on for a long time. So what's the point of talking about this at this exact point in time? For us, we believe that this is a really unique changing point in how we think about managing data context and how we think about managing things like data discovery and data governance. And that's because we're transitioning from the types of audience that needs this data context. It used to be that just humans would come in and need to discover data, need to learn how to use data responsibly and trust it. And we're moving into a world where soon we believe that agents and LLMs and AIs are going to eclipse the amount of need that humans have for this type of data trust and data governance. So for example, I'm sure something that you've seen over the course of this conference is Databricks Genie. That's something in particular that we're really, really excited about, just like Agentbricks, which I think was just released. With both of these tools, there are really powerful ways where you can ask these amazing natural language questions. And I've had so much fun playing around with both of these tools. You can ask these natural language questions and get answers. It's almost magical using these things, and it really feels like this is the future. However, without context, these tools can also be limited. So for example, I loaded in some sample data about this mobile app for my coffee shop, and I wanted to know, well, what's our app conversion rate? And in this case, because of some missing context, Genie also is able to make miscalculations. So here, without the context of how to calculate conversion rate, it produced the wrong query, made the wrong metric, and came to an incorrect, slightly out of accuracy conclusion. So of course, loading it with the meaning and the definition of conversion rate, that's absolutely something I'm sure that Databricks is going to do, and these are only going to continue to improve. However, we also know that every organization, every business is going to have its own unique context and intuition and knowledge that is not going to be universal. And you need a way to manage that, especially when you're working with this new type of data user. So the visual metaphor that I think of is like a genie in a bottle. We have Databricks Genie. It's this absolutely magical, amazing tool, but it's limited. It's limited by the context that it has. So as we're thinking about how to use this and where we're going in the future, we want to think, how can we, by providing context, let the genie out of the bottle and give it that amazing magical power that we are all so excited about using it for? And the way that we answer this question is by thinking about how have we solved this problem for humans. So for humans, for a long time, we've been thinking about how can humans find data? How can they discover it? How can they understand it? How can they know how to use it in a correct way, in a safe way, in a compliant way? And how can we make sure that they're using the authoritative data? These are all problems that we've already thought about solving. And this is not a problem that's exclusive to humans. What we're seeing is that agents have this exact same need, where they also need to make sure that they can find and use properly the authoritative data, and not just pick any data off the shelf, give it a shot, and see what happens. So we feel like we're at really an incredible inflection point where there's all this opportunity to improve, but without context, we're going to be limited. So what we want to do is and what we've done is we've taken a few lessons that we learned with helping humans gain context about data, and then we applied them to how we can help agents and LLMs do the same thing. So I'm going to jump into a demo soon of how we're helping LLMs, but first, let me go through some of the lessons that we learned, and so you'll see how we've applied them. So lesson number 1, relevancy matters. And this is something that we really had to learn the hard way. I worked with another number of our customers and people in the open source community, and we learned that relevancy and ranking is just as important, if not more important, than being able to gather all the results together. So if I search for something like customer or conversion rate or app usage, if I'm comparing it with any of the data warehouses or data platforms that I've seen, you'll see hundreds, if not thousands, of results. So if I just have this long string of results, I really have to dig in and make sure that the first couple results that I'm presenting are the trustworthy and authoritative ones. I spent a lot of time with one of our customers, Chime, and also one of the top design technology firms in the world. Both of them had this intense need that they demanded that the relevancy of their search results were correct and that the top results were always the most authoritative. So we spent a lot of time looking at all different signals, things like freshness, correctness, completeness, ownership, that goes into trustworthiness, and putting that into our relevancy algorithm so that we can make sure that we're not just giving you a handbasket of all sorts of jumbled things, some that you can trust, some that you can't, but that we're providing you authoritative results right in the top of the set. So the next lesson that we learned was that not just relevancy matters, but context matters too. And in all of our different data systems, what we see is that there's a lot of heterogeneity. So we don't see organizations just using exclusively one system and they're done with it. But you have lots of different systems. You have upstream production databases. You have pipeline and transformation tools, maybe multiple warehouses, storage layer, compute layer. Then there's downstream tools, machine learning models, business intelligence tools. So you have all this context separated out. And it kind of becomes a little jumbled. And just having the context is one thing, but being able to bring it together is the absolute key. So another customer that I worked with of ours, Foursquare, when they were working on their data catalog and their data governance, it was really important to them that they had a central catalog where it wasn't just context from their data lake or context from their transformation tool, but they had Airflow pipelines they were pulling in, their storage layer. They also had defined data products and data domains in code, and they sunk that in too. So here they were able to gather together all the different discrete contexts from the business, from the operational side, from the data side, and pull it together into a single place where they could actually make sense of it. So having context is one thing, but being able to bring it together is what really makes it come alive and what's really important. Yep. So that one, I think I got a spoiler there. So lesson 3 is that, so we had relevancy matters, context matters. The final lesson is that ubiquity matters too. So we can come gather all of this important context together. But if it's just stored in one place, that really limits the power that it has to unlock data usage for your users. So something that was really important to us early on was gathering that context, but also syncing it back. So if we have some insight from an upstream production database, we want to provide that to the BI users. We want to provide that to the warehouse too. So we built things like Databricks syncback, so that if we have some insight that we're able to generate, we can provide that to all the different places that data work is done. So those are the 3 lessons that we learned. Relevancy matters, context matters, ubiquity matters. And again, this is what we learned when helping humans discover and use data correctly. Now with this new world that we're transitioning into, we started thinking, well, what does this mean for things like AI agents and LLMs to use this context? Do these lessons still apply? And what we realized is the answer is absolutely. So next up, I'm going to attempt to do a live demo showcasing how providing this context to agents rapidly improves their ability to work and will really change how we all interact with data in the future. So let me transition to that now. So let's take a scenario where I am the owner of a coffee shop chain again, and I want to understand, well, what sort of products correlate with repeat customer usage? What are the products that I want to really sell to my customers so that they'll come back for more and more coffee? So first, I want to take the classic, the old school world, where it's humans discovering data, and walk through how that might look. So I might come in to my catalog. So here I'm in DataHub, and I might type in something like customer visits. So I can hit enter. Then I'll be presented with some searches, and again, or search results. And again, this is where having that relevancy is really important. I don't want to have to look through all the different results that might be relevant here, but I want to be able to trust what comes up on top. You can see there might be multiple platforms, multiple systems. And again, usually what we'll see here is hundreds to thousands of results. So ranking is super important. From there, as a human, I'll have to come in and try to understand how is the schema used. That's when I might pop into lineage and see context about how is this data derived. Here I can see it coming from production databases. I can see that being synced by events into the warehouse. Then I'm also able to see on the flip side how that gets consumed by downstream business intelligence tools. Again, this is how I'm starting to learn how to properly use this data, how to take advantage of it. Now, there's a lot of other insights that I might get. There's all these tabs to open up. I can see common queries to see, well, this is how the data is used. This is how it's queried by the platform. I can also look at statistics to see, well, what columns have null values? What are sample values? And what's the distribution of some of these numbers? So I can start to understand the shape of it. There's all these different boxes to start opening up, things like quality, et cetera. And it puts a lot of load on humans. It's important to have this context. Without the context, I mean, I'm not even going to be able to get started. But even then, once I have it and gathering it in of itself, it's challenging just because there's a lot of information to know how to use it properly, access control. There's a lot to take into account, especially with the advent of LLMs and agents and tools like Genie. We started thinking, how can we make this so much simpler for users so that you don't have to have all this mental load of sorting through the context that has been gathered together? So now let me walk through our next attempt at bringing all these different things, but thinking about it in the new world, a world with agents and LLMs. So here I can come in and I might ask the same question, but maybe I can ask it a little bit more in a more natural language way. So what are the products that correlate with repeat customer visits? So now here's this, at this point we've identified that this is a semantic question. So instead of going to our standard search, we're going to go into a more semantic search. So at this point, DataHub is interacting with its own DataHub agent. And DataHub has opened up APIs via an MCP server so that the agent is able to interact directly with DataHub. So this agent is now asking DataHub questions. It's going to start doing that search. Because we've learned so much about how to make search relevant, we're able to actually provide this agent now with not just any old result about customer visits and customer usage and products, but the top ones. All right, so the next thing that you can see it doing here is it also is looking at other types of insights that DataHub's providing. So you were seeing earlier, humans are able to look at queries. Well, agents are too. And so in this case, in this particular case, the agent's able to identify that there's a third table that should be pulled in because of a join. So now it's actually expanded its query beyond what is just matching keywords, but by using things like analyzing join patterns and common query patterns, it's able to expand that search out. Again, by having the agent interact directly with DataHub and ask DataHub questions rather than a human. Below that, you can see that the agent's also pulling in context from lineage. So in this case, we have upstream insights from production warehouses and production databases. Like maybe we've got column names. A lot of times there's really high quality documentation on a production database, but that might not have made it into the warehouse. Similarly, we see a lot of times that there's a lot of really powerful insights like metric definitions that are stored in BI tools. So I did see that Databricks just announced their own metrics catalog, and that's going to help in terms of consolidating this information. But if there's going to be BI tools out there, there's always going to be context locked away in those BI tools that can be pulled in. So the agent's able to pull in these different definitions, pull in context from lineage, common join patterns, and then at this point, it can provision a package of context that it can hand over to Genie. So we can push that down to Genie, and Genie is now not just working completely in isolation on its own with the context that it has initially provided, but it gets to work with all of the context that we were providing to it as well. So again, we're able to supercharge Genie, let it out of the bottle, and now it's able to answer much more powerful questions. Like here, we're going to get a list of those products that correlate with repeat visits. But we're not leaving Genie on its own. And things like, what are the product definitions? What are the human language versions of these products, not just their IDs? What does it actually mean to define a repeat customer? At what point does a customer become a repeat customer? Genie doesn't have to try to figure this out on its own, but it's getting provided all that context from DataHub. Again, we think this is just incredibly exciting and really the future for how people are going to start interacting with data. So since DataHub sits in the center, it has the ability to both gather all this context and then federate it out. So for example, we also are exploring interacting with other systems as well as Databricks. So you don't have to have your end users figure out which tool to log into, figure out how to go do semantic queries in those and provide semantic layers in theirs. But your end users, even without knowing how to construct a SQL query, without knowing where your data is stored, they're going to be able to come into this one front door, ask questions, and instantly get answers. All right. So I'm going to come back to the slides just for one last wrap up. So we did the demo, and I just wanted to talk through again what you saw might have felt a little bit like a magic trick. So how did we make this work? So the human comes in and asks that natural language question. Now this can be something either to an existing LLM agentic tool like Claude, Desktop, Cursor, we support those. Or it could be directly to DataHub and DataHub's agent. At that point, the question is going to be received and the agent's going to start working. That's when it will start making calls to DataHub's MCP server, which exposes out all the different tools that DataHub can do. So things like searching, looking at lineage, accessing downstream tools like Genie or other warehouses, agentic querying tools. So now the agent will start interacting with DataHub's MCP for server. First, it's going to ask questions like, hey, here's terms that I'm looking for. Then it might start to ask questions like, all right, I found a couple of results. Are these the trustworthy ones? Prove to me that these are trustworthy. After that, it can start to do that query expansion that you were seeing. And then once it feels like it's got a set of, here's the tables that we want, this is how we're going to do our query, at that point, it can forward that question down for the last mile to Genie, have that natural language query executed and parsed, and then return the result right to the user. And the thing that's really exciting about this is Genie is just one of these tools that we can interact with. As long as something's open to interacting agentically or via an MCP server, it can be plugged into this mix, and we can continue to bring more context to that. So thank you so much for joining. That's the end. If you want to learn more and see the magic, we have a booth E13317 over that way. So swing by if you want to talk more or see a demo. And also make sure to fill out the survey about this talk if you liked it. So thank you so much for joining.